I'd appreciate it. Just keep getting your food. I'm going to just talk a little bit about the Black Bag Speaker Series before we get started, and we're going to have Abel Gordon talk about the task force. My name is Ethan Johnson, and I'm an assistant professor in the Black Studies Department. I want to welcome you to the Black Bag Speaker Series. This is really great. I think this is going to be an exciting, great event today. So I wanted to just let people know what the Black Bag Speaker Series is about. 5 years ago, we were sitting together in the Black Studies Department, and we were just trying to create a place where people, organizations, and activists in Portland that were doing work with communities of Black people here in Portland, had a place here at Portland State to engage with the students and professors and anybody who wants to be here. So that's what this event is about, to create a forum for people out there doing work related to communities of Black people in Portland. I wanted to just share a little an experience that I had in doing this event and how it's impacted me, and I think it kind of speaks to, in some ways, what this event is about. When we first started this event, we had a small little black bag. That's our structure for advertising the event. It was just a little one, and we would leave it in conspicuous places. And one day, this great professor from Fine Arts sent his students up to the Black Studies offices and other offices, and he said he wants his students to work collaboratively with other departments and make something that we needed. And there was one guy there who said he would like to work with us, and the guy was this white man, probably about 35 years old, and he was dressed in leather from top to bottom, and he rode a motorcycle from Salem to here to go to school. And from my perspective, he wasn't the type of person that would be working with the Black Studies Department. But this is what I'm serious. This is what he produced for us, and this is, I think, an excellent structure. It's been really helpful in us promoting the event. It's also helped me, it's challenged me in terms of who I can collaborate with, right? And also, I think for him, it was a way for him to participate and contribute to something that he may never have had the opportunity to share with and work with. But I think that's what the Black Bag Speaker Series is about. I wanted to just give you an idea of what we've been doing in the Black Bag Speaker Series over the last 4 years. We've had a lot of events here. We've had ones that focus on education. We've brought in, and people might be familiar with these organizations, we brought in SEI, we brought in Bridge Builders, and we brought in an organization called Reaching and Empowering All People. Those organizations, we brought in Mark Jackson, and we brought in Kevin Toller. We've brought in Cascadia and Brother to Brother that do work around HIV and AIDS in Portland. We've brought in Joy Leary, who wrote a book called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, and she presented on her work. She's a professor here in the School of Social Work. We've done forums of racial profiling. We had Derek Foxworth and Joanne Bowman come in here. Derek Foxworth was the previous chief of police, and Joanne Bowman is the director for Oregon Action. We've also done work on gentrification and segregation in Portland. We had Donald Frazier of Genesis Community Fellowship Church come in and talk to the work that he's been doing around that, and also Dr. T. Allen Becca, both of our pastors in Northeast Portland. We've done a lot of work, and it's been exciting. I also wanted to just say one of the people on our panel today, Jerry Williams, is sitting right here, who now works in the city of Portland, was our first Black Bag. She was previously working for the Environmental Justice Action Group in Northeast Portland. So we're really glad to have her here, and being the first Black Bag, it's coming together. So, This didn't happen by itself. There's a lot of people here who've contributed to this. We have John Joyner, who's standing right there, and he's the director for the Multicultural Center. He's made this place available for the Black Bag Speakers. Appreciate it, John. Thank you. Also, Saeed Haji, who is the assistant coordinator, is not here, but he's also been very helpful. And Musa, are you here? So Musa is not here, but Musa is the graduate assistant who does a lot of work for the Black Bag Speaker Series and getting the advertisement out. I also just wanted to introduce the Black Studies Department faculty that are here. And if you could stand up, I'm not seeing any of those that are here. Is Daryl Milner here? Well, none of us are here. Is Jose here? I'm here. I know, I'm going to get there. I know. And one of our black bags was on with Abel. When Abel left her position as a senator, we were lucky enough to get her in the Black Studies Department, and we did a black bag just to welcome her here. So Abel Worley. And I saw Daryl Milner earlier, who is the longest serving member of the Black Studies Department. I think he's going to be coming back. I wish he was here and I could introduce him. So with that, I would just like to give it over to Abel Worley, who's going to talk a little bit about the Environmental Justice Task Force of the government.
I'm going to give it over to Will.
Thank you, Abel. I'll be short. I'd like to thank the Black Studies Department and Black Bag Series for having our task force. We're not in school much. We're a task force. We're real. We're a creature of law. And we deal with issues of race and the environment in controversial contexts. You have activists here with students. You are future leaders and current strong leaders, all of you, for this. Sybil Ackerman was a terrific help in organizing this as one of my task force members. And I'd like to thank her. We have elected officials here. We have EJ leaders here. We have Senator Merkley's office represented here. And I'm not a politician, so forgive me if I don't recognize you. But we have other people like that here, because this is a salient, unescapable political issue of environmental justice. Environmental justice is a disproportionate impact of past, present environmental decisions and present and future environmental processes. The United Church of Christ study found that there's a 1 in 10,000 chance of environmental racism being random, because almost all hazardous waste sites, controlled and uncontrolled, are in black communities. Black communities, not necessarily Hispanic, African American communities. And it's a footstep of slavery. And you can look all this stuff up later and become empowered that way. My panelists will talk about environmental justice in Oregon. I've lived a lot of it. I was on another commission before this under a prior governor, and we had a rough relationship with state agencies. They didn't even return a phone call to us. So now we have a different relationship, and we've made a big difference. The task force members who are here, I'd like to introduce, just so you can get to know who we are. My spouse is Robin Morris Collins. She's the founding chair of this, and then made me take it over. You know how that works. And Ben Duncan over here to her left, he sort of raised his hand. And Ben, you're with Multnomah County Health Department. On that is Leroy here, Leroy Jackson. Oh, he's coming up from Klamath Falls. He's from the Commission on Indian Services, and he's on our task force. Anyone on my task force who I'm missing? John. Khalid, last name? Waha is the vice chair of this and may soon be the chair of this task force. I haven't told him that. And Jonathan Ostar from Organizing People, Activating Leaders. Oh, I'm sorry, John, way in the back, is here. And we've worked hard. We're the hardest working task force in the state. We don't get paid a dime. We're all volunteers. We've had quorum for every meeting, and you can find more information about us right on the Oregon Governor's webpage. and go right to Environmental Justice Task Force. The creator of the law was Senate Bill 420, and the creator of the law is Senator Abel Gordley, and it was Senate Bill 420, and it represents the shoulders of many people we stand upon to be here today. Many people who fought this issue when everyone thought it would just go away. Environmental disproportionality in U.S. decision-making will continue for our foreseeable future, and nothing will be sustainable without environmental justice. Let me be clear about that. So, without me flapping my gums more, you can always see that, let me turn it over to former Senator Abel Gordley.
Thank you very much. Are we on? John, are you still in the room? Little mic check. I just want to say, can you hear me? Thank you very much for choosing to spend time with us this evening here at Portland State University, where knowledge serves the city. And we in the Black Studies Department, including our chair, Dr. Kofi Agorsa, we're especially grateful to have this opportunity to greet you in this, our 40th anniversary year. And you heard a reference to Dr. Darrell Milner earlier. Dr. Milner has been a part of the Black Studies Department for 35 years this month. And so we celebrate him and his scholarship and mentorship. And when he comes in the room, we'll greet him with more applause. He's a real treasure. Our students, our Black Studies students, please stand and be recognized. I see familiar faces in the room. Particularly want to give a shout out to Timothy Moss. You heard Timothy play the piano earlier. In addition to being a brilliant scholar, he is a spoken word artist, and now you know that he's also a fine musician. I want to thank my colleague, Dr. Ethan Johnson, coordinator of the Black Dad Series, and Sybil Ackerman. I'm saying her name 3 times, just to again acknowledge all of her hard work and excellent organizing, getting all of you into this room. Thank you, Sybil. And again, our thanks and acknowledgement to all the members of the Environmental Justice Task Force, all of those who had a role in making this evening possible. And I want to use some of my time before getting to introductions of the panel, just to give you a kind of a snapshot, a little speedy journey of how it is that we got to this moment, at least through my lens and through some of my involvement in organizing around environmental justice as a public policy issue, which started around 1988, when I attended the National Black Organizers Conference in Atlanta, Georgia. And this topic was on our agenda. I had recently completed training along with a dear friend, Ramon Ramirez, who's with Platoon. Ramon and I had attended the Center for Third World Organizing training in the Bay Area. And again, this topic was on the agenda. And at that time, I was working with the American Friends Service Committee as director of the Southern Africa program, and also very active with the Black United Front, local chapter, and the national organization. And so in 1991, I had the opportunity to attend the United Nations Conference on the Environment in New York City, and a parallel conference on environmental justice attended by indigenous activists from all over the world. And again, this was 1991. In attending that conference, with me was Richard Brown, a member of the Black United Front. The front under Richard's leadership had been organizing around the presence of toxic chemicals in the waters of the Columbia Slough. This was a popular source of fishing for food, particularly for African American and Asian community folks at that time. And it was Richard Brown's persistent work and leadership, the leadership of the Black United Front, that got the city of Portland involved in posting fishing the slough as dangerous to health and a community campaign to inform the community about the health hazards. 1991. And it was also Richard Brown who played a key role in establishing and who sat on the first governor's Environmental Justice Task Force under Governor Barbara Roberts. So we go to 1991, and I took this environmental justice agenda with me into a new role in the Oregon legislature as an appointed and elected member of the House of Representatives. I worked with then Governor Barbara Roberts, who established an environmental justice task force by executive order at the request of my office, and then later with Governor Kitzhaber, who also established a task force by executive order. In fact, the language for the Kitzhaber executive order was written by my office at the request of the governor, and I assigned that task to a wonderful intern from the University of Oregon, Beth Englander. By the time Governor Kulongoski came into office, we had tried unsuccessfully to get legislation passed over several sessions, even with Democrats in control and under 3 Democrat governors. And after a delay of attention for a couple of years before Kulongoski's administration agreed to pick up this agenda. And with that said, I do want to acknowledge Governor Kulongoski's staff, who's present in the, in the person of Jessica. Now he's recently married. Thank you, Jessica, for being here. Thank you for all. It was 2007 when we were finally able to achieve passage of Senate Bill 420, creating the Governor's Environmental Justice Task Force, which reports directly to the governor about environmental justice concerns and progress of state agencies toward meeting environmental justice requirements. And the law also requires that natural resource agencies address environmental justice issues as a part of their standard operating procedures. And they must also report annually to the Environmental Justice Task Force and the governor about their actions in underrepresented communities. You'll find that particular language that I just read to you in the Urban League of Portland State of Black Oregon report, as written by Ben Duncan, one of our panelists. He wrote the environmental justice essay in the State of Black Oregon Urban League report. And I hope that you all, if you have not read the report, please read the entire report, and particularly the environmental justice essay. It's also important to note here that one state agency in particular took a leading role in establishing and institutionalizing the early environmental justice work, and that is the Department of Environmental Quality under the leadership of Fred Hansen in the 1990s, who later went on to head up TriMet. And Fred testified at every legislative session that we had a bill in a committee, a real champion. And I am particularly excited and honored about the panel this evening because folks who labored together with me over the years and provided the expert testimony to help finally gain passage of this legislation. The champions, the room full of champions, are here. Robin Morris Collin and Will Collin, Jerry Williams, Ben Duncan, and if I'm leaving anyone out, please let me let me know. Don't want to leave anyone out because there are so many good people who hung in there along the way and who understood that we needed to be long-distance runners in order to get this legislation passed. And it is my hope that the law will be strengthened in the 2011 session and that the panel will speak to that opportunity as a part of your remarks this evening. And so, again, I thank you all for your presence. And now to the panel. I'm going to ask each one of you to do self-introductions, self-bios, so we can just shorten our time up a bit.
I want to thank Abel. She is truly a patron saint, and without her, we would not have achieved this landmark legislation, and we wouldn't be in a position to actually make it work. And I want to talk to you today a little bit about how we are making environmental justice work and why we need so much help from those of you who are gathered together in the room, because we are standing on shoulders just as you will be standing on our shoulders, and we all need to work together to bring environmental justice to our communities. My name is Robin Morris Collin. I'm a professor of law at Willamette University College of Law. Beth Englander, by the way, was one of my students when I was at University of Oregon, so it's all connected. Since I'm the first speaker, let me do the professorly thing and give you the definition that we, as the task force, have been using in terms of environmental justice. What is environmental justice? Environmental justice is equal protection from environmental and health hazards and meaningful public participation in decisions that affect the environment in which people live, work, practice spirituality, and play. Environmental justice communities include minority and low-income communities, tribal communities, and other communities traditionally underrepresented in public processes. What our chair told you, our current chair told you, is that this is a task force that is devoted to making sure that the history of racism, slavery, segregation, which has left its mark on our environment, is corrected. We challenge the way that our history of oppression has distributed benefits and burdens in our environment. We challenge the way that our health is affected by environmental conditions that are imposed upon people because of their race or their poverty, because of their vulnerability. That's wrong. And we challenge that and intend to change it. This task force, I was the original chair, and my vision of the work of our task force is to connect the natural resource agencies of our state and our communities. Too often, community is the piece left out. Businesses and industry have lobbyists in the government. Where is community being lobbied for? Where are community issues being understood, and especially, unfortunately, in the absence of our dear Senator, Abel Gordley, communities tend not to be heard, and the way they can be heard is through processes of public participation. That's part of our Your Voice document that we have with us here. One of the first things that we were able to do, again, thank you, Sybil, with Sybil's leadership, is to draft a statement of power for our communities. This is the Your Voice document. If you didn't get a copy of it, please do pick it up. It's right here at the table. There are more. And oh, by the way, if you didn't sign in, please, please, please do sign in, because we need to have your voices with us, and we need to be able to contact you. So both those things are available at the table. A draft statement of your voice and how to participate in environmental decisions that affect where you live and work and play. The other thing that we were able to do is to establish a relationship with the natural resource agencies themselves. And we found allies there. The word collaboration has already come up. couple of times tonight, and it's important that I highlight that and lift up collaboration as well. We've experienced collaboration on the task force between the ethnic commissions, and most amazingly to me, we've established collaboration with our natural resource agencies, and you'll see some of the representatives in the back of the room tonight. In fact, if the state natural resource agency people are here, would you stand up just for a moment? Thank you so much. These are people who are working with us and with our communities. And they have agreed to do some pretty amazing things. Number one, they have agreed to work with us to establish a requirement that all managers in these natural resource agencies will become culturally competent and environmentally justice competent. This will change the thinking, the culture of these important agencies. We could not have achieved that kind of commitment without their embrace, without their endorsement. And I thank them from the bottom of my heart. They are doing this because they understand that success for our agencies and for our state mean that we have to be inclusive. We have to embrace our communities, or else this isn't sustainable. And frankly, this is a message that is too often lost, I think. There's not going to be successful sustainability if we continue to make some of our communities dumping grounds, if we continue to make some of our communities sacrifice zones. That's not sustainable. That's not a plan. I understand that PSU is devoted to sustainability, and I applaud that. Yay, good. But sustainability isn't sustainable if we do not embrace our communities fully, if we don't commit to rectifying the inherited distribution of privilege. Some communities can buy their way out of filthy water and filthy air, for some period of time. But the problem with that kind of model is it's only good for a little while. And that nature itself doesn't recognize certain sacrifice zones. It will make a sacrifice zone of all of us if we do not rectify some of these important issues. So, speaking in terms of the vision for the future, what our task force is turning to now is a very tough task for which we are grateful to have your presence if you'll engage with us. We need to activate our communities. We need to make sure, just as Senator Gordley explained to us, and by the way, she gave us the oral history of the ABJ movement in Oregon. That is extraordinarily valuable. I'm so glad that this is being captured on tape. What we have to do is what Richard Brown did, what all the other activists did. We need to get the information about what is happening to our bodies as a result of our environment. And we need to take that information to communities and make sure that communities have the tools that they need to address these issues and to speak to them. We will not get any sort of concession without a demand. Power concedes nothing without demand. And what we need, I'm going to go one more minute. What we need to have is a community that is empowered to deliver those demands clearly and effectively. Let me close with this thought. With all of Portland and PSU's commitment to sustainability, I see a color line. And it's not green. And what environmental justice is doing, not trying to do, we are doing it, is to make equity a fundamental piece of sustainability. Some people don't get that. And all the money and the investment goes to sustainability, and it leaves environmental justice constantly begging. That's not right. And we will need, as a task force, we need your help in correcting that imbalance. And the rest of my panelists will tell us more about how to do that. Thank you.
I'm going to use the crutch of PowerPoint. And I have to be signed back here. Nope. So I would normally never put myself to speak after Abel and Bob, and I have the unfortunate task of doing that, but it's an honor to have the opportunity. My name is Ben Duncan. I'm a health educator with Multnomah County Environmental Health Division, and as you can kind of see, I really want to talk about bridging kind of this environmental justice and public health, because I think from a public health standpoint, we really are uniquely positioned to see what the ramifications of environmental injustice are. And hopefully, as I go through this, it will really be kind of a visual representation of what that looks like. But starting with, I think where we're going in public health is this intentional shift of language, to recognize that we're shifting from just health disparities to health inequities, recognizing that health disparities are really just differences between populations. The idea that old people die more than young people. But it doesn't look at the social justice causes. So intentionality is important when we're looking at using the language of inequity and using the language of social justice. So I'll point out two. The first sentence, health inequities are health disparities that result from social injustice. And then the last sentence, that health inequities are avoidable, they're unfair, and they're unjust. And if you hear the language around environmental justice and look at the language around health inequities, they're very similar. And again, it gives public health a unique position and role in looking at how we address environmental justice and health outcomes. So I want to show, and I don't know how well you can see it, I'm going to show a few slides, and really this is meant as kind of a visual representation of identifying communities that are impacted by environmental injustice. So if you're looking, this is a percent of populations of color by census tract in 2007, which does not include Latinos or Hispanic. But you can see, just pay attention to kind of where the dark spots are, and imagine them as overhead slides. So this is Hispanic or Latino by census tract. And you see some of the same communities, but you also see darker areas in East County. And I will, lay a disclaimer that, this is Multnomah County data. It's not state of Oregon. I mean, we're in Multnomah County. That's my knowledge base. That's where I can make a phone call and get that data in these slides. But this is not unique to Portland. It's not unique to Multnomah County. You can look at anywhere in the country, and Will kind of talked about the incidence of 1 in 10,000 that race is not a factor. This is percent of population below 200% of poverty in Multnomah County. Again, as these maps continue, we kind of see the more dark spot. But you'll notice these same communities, low-income people, people of color communities, are very similar. Exposure to environmental problems, this is cancer risk per million. Again, the same dark areas. Diesel particulate matter, again, the same dark areas. And what it's really emphasizing that this is cumulative impact on these communities. So these same communities are experiencing the effects of poverty, are experiencing the effects of pollution disproportionately. And this, this slide is looking at just at Multnomah County clinic data for our clients under 6 years old with asthma. And if you remember the poverty slide, if you see that kind of moon-shaped, crescent-shaped image, you see that asthma is lining up in a direct correlation. So that's how we see it. I mean, in public health, we see the negative health outcomes of environmental injustices. So this slide, there's two things I really want you to pay attention to. One, that the arrows go both ways. And when we're talking environmental justice, looking at those top two boxes, root factors and environmental factors, that's kind of, I feel like, where public health needs to go, and I feel like in some ways, and like to believe that that's where we are going. I also want to point out that behavioral factors and medical services are on the bottom of that. And that's intentional. We recognize that we can deliver these messages about eat right and exercise, wear a condom, the idea that at an individual level you can be healthy and you can make choices to be healthy, but that's sometimes a false premise. The idea that you can have you can go and eat fresh fruit if you don't have access to local produce in your neighborhood. So when we go start looking, of course, medical services, having access to healthcare is important, but if you're being killed by the environment, then it doesn't matter if you have a good doctor. It doesn't matter if they speak your language. It's important in our delivery of services, but when we look at public health through an environmental justice lens, it's relatively insignificant. So we have to be addressing those environmental factors, the toxic contaminants, the joblessness, unequal education, poor transportation, et cetera, et cetera. We need to be addressing and challenging ourselves to think about how do we create solutions around poverty, discrimination, oppression, and lack of power. That's how we're going to address the negative health outcomes that we see. Again, I don't know how well you can see this, but it's one more time a visual representation. This is what I call the African American Health and Equity Life Continuum. Two things to notice. One, in the bottom, you see these socioeconomic factors, those kind of environmental justice factors. The places we live, we work, we play, and practice spirituality. Education, housing, environmental hazards, healthcare access, the justice system. Each one of those is their own conversation. Each one of those is its own lecture. But if you look at the top piece, that's what we see every day in public health. Literally from cradle to the grave, we're seeing health inequities, many of them that are avoidable, unjust, and unfair based on social inequities. So as we look at public health and we look at our own data, we recognize that these things are interrelated, and that challenges us to think on a different level about how we approach our work. So I'll kind of close, which is talking about some of the challenges to this. I mean, if we're looking at addressing social determinants of health and thinking about that, those root factor slides, we're not going to pass an ordinance that eliminates racism. So it's not that simple, but how we do our work and how we commit to a different approach to use a health equity and environmental justice lens is how we can start addressing those root causes. And obviously they're huge. I mean, poverty, racism, discrimination, and oppression, those are huge things to tackle, but I think from our role and our obligation is to think at a different level about how we allocate funds, how we do our work, and how we work better to empower communities to speak for themselves. And I'll pass it on now to Michael O'Meally, who will talk about really how DEQ is incorporating environmental justice into their work.
Thanks again. My name is Michael O'Meally. I'm with the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality, which is the state's agency that's responsible for protecting Oregon's air, water, and land. And we do this through a number of ways. By issuing permits that control the amount of pollution that can be released to the environment, by cleaning up areas that have been contaminated with chemicals, by managing the proper disposal of garbage and hazardous waste, and by enforcing Oregon's environmental laws. And I was asked to just come speak a little bit about the work we've gotten to do with the task force over the last couple of years and share a perspective of a state agency who is working on these issues also. So as Abel mentioned, DEQ began looking at environmental justice issues closely in the 1990s. And in 1997, we adopted a policy that defined environmental justice as the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people in the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental regulations, regardless of people's race, color, age, national origin, education, or income level. That's a powerful definition. And there are a couple terms in there that are even further defined. Fair treatment means that no one should bear a disproportionate share of the negative environmental consequences resulting from pollution or from the implementation of government programs. And meaningful involvement means that we in government seek out and involve those who may be affected by the decisions that we make, and that people's voices have a chance to influence our decisions. And these are goals that DEQ strives for, and I'm going to leave them up here for a while because they remind us of both the opportunity and the responsibility that we have to look more closely at how our actions may affect people that we may hear from less often than others. And this gets at the distribution of privilege that Robin mentioned. For example, people who are balancing multiple jobs and caring for children may not have the chance to come to a government meeting in the evenings to talk about a new permit in their area. Nor may they have the chance to, or the time, to research environmental issues and raise concerns to us. In addition, racially and ethnically diverse communities may feel like they have less access to government decision-making, or they may have less trust that the government is going to respond to their concerns when they take the time to raise them. And at the same time, these communities often are more affected by multiple sources of pollution in their neighborhoods than other communities, than more affluent white communities. And they're more at risk for health impacts, as you saw from Ben's maps. And these are justice issues. So as a government agency, it's our responsibility to understand the disproportionate impacts that some communities face, and to do what we can in our actions to address those impacts. And for DEQ, that means finding new, more effective ways to reach out, to share information about our environment, and to seek people's input in the decisions that we make. It's also about diversifying DEQ's workforce and the advisory committees that we use to help us develop environmental policies so that our decisions reflect the diversity of perspectives of everyone who lives here. And this is an ongoing process for us to develop this type of mindset and this type of approach. One of our main challenges right now is having the resources needed to support the level of outreach to the communities that we're less connected to right now. But the Environmental Justice Task Force is helping us develop some really critical tools for doing that. For example, John Oster in the back, who's the director of OPAL, and other task force members. Thank you, John, right there. They're helping us develop maps similar to ones that Ben showed you, but for the whole state, that identify low-income communities, ethnically and racially diverse communities, and overlay some of the environmental and the health issues that they face, so that we can start to see visually where people are most vulnerable and start to take a closer look at the actions that we need to take to address some of those issues. And we hope to have initial maps available this summer to share with you and others to get some initial input on how we should be using that information. Also, we at DEQ have started talking more about environmental justice within our agency to raise our own awareness of the disproportionate impacts that some communities might face and take a look at how we can use our resources to address those impacts. This past summer, all of DEQ's 70 or so managers spent a half day talking about environmental justice and the potential actions we could take. And we were very lucky to have both Robin and Jerry as our guest speakers at that training to encourage our thinking and inspire our action. And we're now developing an environmental justice training program for all of DEQ employees that we expect to launch this spring. We also created a new webpage last year that shares our goals about environmental justice with community members and invites people to contact me personally if they have information, questions, or concerns to share that we need to pay more attention to. And I left some copies of our webpage on the back table if you're interested in seeing that. And also, as I mentioned, we are actively trying to diversify our advisory committees. And I left a list of those committees on the back table in hopes that some of you might be interested in potentially working with us in that capacity. Finally, as Robin mentioned, we worked with the task force to develop new expectations for DEQ managers related to environmental justice and cultural competency that we expect to integrate in all of our managers' position descriptions and our performance appraisals later this year as part of a systematic revamp to our performance management system. And then in terms of on-the-ground issues, I just want to mention a few examples of the work we're doing now to address some of the disproportionate impacts that we know communities are experiencing right now. We're working with tribal nations to strengthen protections for people who eat significant amounts of fish, either for cultural or subsistence purposes, by changing the state's environmental rules that govern how much pollution can be released to Oregon waters. We're also working with voluntary partners in the Portland area and elsewhere to reduce diesel emissions from school buses and commercial vehicles to help improve the quality of air for kids and communities that live near highways. And we started developing a comprehensive strategy to reduce toxic pollution in Oregon's air, water, and land that we hope will give us some information about where communities are most vulnerable and what tools we can use to help address those risks. But that said, what I want to emphasize here most is that we have a very long way to go, and we have just started this process of thinking about how we need to change what we're doing, look at what we're doing in a different way to address environmental justice issues. We have a long way to go. We have just started this process. And the task force is so essential in this effort because, as you know, environmental justice issues are very complex, involving land use issues, community housing issues, transportation, access to green space and healthy foods, job availability. And DEQ and other agencies each have just a small piece of the puzzle that influence the whole picture. So the task force is bringing us all together so we can talk about these issues collectively and look at what we can all do And the task force is also positioned to make more systematic recommendations for larger changes that might be needed. So I want to close by saying, again, that we are just starting this process, I think, in a really meaningful way. We have a long way to go. And say how much I appreciate the leadership and the assistance of the task force in helping us on this journey. And also how my gratitude to all of you here for being here tonight to help share your thoughts on how we should move forward with this. So thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Sundall-Williams, and I am an organizer and an activist. I currently work with the City of Portland. I run the Diversity Civic Leadership Programs, which are a group of programs that empower underrepresented groups, including communities of color and immigrant refugee groups, to engage with the city. That's my current job. Previous to that, I was the executive director of the Environmental Justice Action Group, a group that worked on defeating the expansion of the freeway in 2001. Taking on Oregon steel mills and getting them to shut down their scrap melting business, and any other great environmental justice issues. What is so great about the 8 minutes I get to speak is because I don't have to repeat any of these other things that now other agencies know. So that means that on some level we've moved somewhere because I don't have to say it anymore. So I just get to talk about the piece I like the most. The piece that creates the change is you and your involvement. I come from the Klamath tribe. It was a tribe that in 1954 was terminated by the United States government because I've moved from community activist to working for government, which was never a plan of mine, trust me. I've got to learn a lot of things. Policy dictates where we go in this community. And we don't start by getting involved like my friend Ed Garrett and I have been sitting on the Columbia River Crossing Task Force for many years. We don't start there. We actually start in the planning piece, when we're making the decisions on what things are going to look like in our communities. In 1954, a policy was made that said, the Klamath tribe no longer exists. We're going to take your 20 million acres and you're no longer going to be Indians. Go mix in with the white folks. Am I right, Leroy? This is my cousin back there. We're all members of the tribe, so we're all related because there's like 4,000 of us. So it's really cool to have somebody from Klamath up here. So I got to give a shout out. But policies directed that. Policies took the land. Policies told a whole tribes of people that they were no longer who they were. Policies said you're no longer Indian. Go be white. Forget about your culture. Don't teach your language anymore. Policies dictate where we put freeways. Policies dictate where we put airports, where we put landfills. And generally, all those things get placed in places where people have no voice. So the most important thing is to develop the voice, to own the voice, and to make sure that we don't take all of the detriment in our community. Correct?
Correct.
And so who learns, and so Portland's, and so it's funny because I met Bob and Robin in 1994 when I was a hotel worker exposed to toxic chemicals, and they were running the coalition, the Conference Against Environmental Racism, and I met them then, and then I met Ben Duncan down there, I met John Oster down there, I met a lot of folks, and then John Oster came to become an intern of mine, and then Ben Duncan went to work for the county, and then I met the people at the county, and then we met people at DEQ, and we built relationships. So what I want to talk to you about in my tiny amount of time is what it takes. What does it take to win? We'll just talk about the 4 R's first. Many times when we go and we talk to task forces, or we go to talk to the Portland Planning Department, or whoever we go to talk to say what we want in our community, one of the issues that we have many times is that we do not have a relationship with them. And because we don't have a relationship with them, and many times big business does have a relationship with them, it's easier for them to listen to them than us, correct? So we need to build a relationship. That's number 1 of the 4 R, the 5 R's, relationship. What do you need when you build a relationship? You need respect, correct? We need respect, so we need to know when we're building a relationship that you hear me when I tell you things, that you actually hear me, that when you come out into my community, because this is the issue we're looking at right now many times with the city of Portland and the Portland plan, is that if you come out and ask me what I want, that you actually come back and tell me that you heard what I wanted and that you've actually done something. Many, many times, and it's a cultural thing, I need to tell you, dominant culture generally works on intention. I intended to do it, so that should be good enough. Many people of color cultures actually work off of action. If you didn't do it, then you did nothing, correct? So if we don't understand each other, how do we build respect, correct? So respect is number 2 in the 5 R's. Number 3, relevance. Is it relevant for me to have a bike lane when I don't have a sidewalk to walk on or to wait for the bus? When I don't have a bus covering for me? Is it relevant for you to have that conversation with me? Is it relevant for you to come out and be the one who's developed all the questions, and I'm supposed to answer your questions even though they don't relate to me?
Right.
So we have to establish some sort of relevance when we talk to government about what we want in our communities. So number 3 is relevance. Number 4 is reciprocity. What do I get out of this? You know, it's totally okay to say, what am I getting out of this when you're asking me for time? What do I get out of this when you come into my community? Because I can tell you when you talk to the elders in North and Northeast Portland, what they tell you is, yeah, they promised us things when they put in Emmanuel Hospital. Yeah, they promised us things when they put in Memorial Coliseum. Yeah, they promised us things when they put in Lloyd Center. They said we'd have opportunities, and they said we'd have jobs, and they said we'd have all these things. And you know what? Every time government comes to talk to us, we lose just a little bit more. We had to give up our houses. We had to give up this. We had to give up that. Where's the reciprocity in that? So once again, we'd have to go back to understand, hopefully we're having a conversation with people who respect us enough, who bring us things and allow and listen to us so that it's relevant to us, the Portlanders, the taxpayers in this community, correct? The people who go to the school here, correct? If it's not relevant to us, why are you asking us? If you want our opinion, why do you not listen when we give it to you? Why do you not why do we not have reciprocity where you come back and you actually tell us that you heard what we said and you actually did something about it? You know, when you get that little paycheck, you get a little paycheck, you might as well tear off the end, right? Because 10% goes at least to the feds, right? Where does that money go? 10% goes to the state, right? So all public employees like myself and many others, you are paying me to do a job. So when we talk to government, we're paying government to protect us, to plan for us. That money that comes out of our check actually goes for us. We are the owners of the government. We have to own it, right? We have to have this reciprocity. So reciprocity is number 4. Thank you. Number 5 is responsibility. Because when we go out and we make these plans, we all need to take a part of the responsibility. We cannot think that government is going to fix anything. I can tell you, I've worked for government, I've worked for community. I've seen a lot of change in community organizing. Government works much slower. You want to see something happen? All of you join together, all of you sign this voice document and see what you can make happen over the next year. And contribute and voice your opinion and make sure that you're heard. Because if you're not getting what you need, I'm probably not getting what I need. My grandchildren aren't getting what they need, right? It's 7 generations. There are different cultures that we deal with. And many times we don't get respect for the way we think, the way we operate as a community, the way we look, the way we want to plan for 7 generations when somebody else, that was me, like, I hit the mic. But the way we plan for 7 generations to think about everybody, right? Thank you, I have no more time, but when the person gets elected and things change after every time somebody gets elected, we need to develop a plan that we put people into office who are going to do what we ask them to do. And that you yourselves, at one point, if you're passionate about this work like I am, think about running yourself. Thank you.
thank all of the panelists again. The wonderful thing is that we have 30 minutes for Q&A and your comments and observations. And I want to take a point of personal privilege and call on any students first. If there are students who have a question or a comment, please stand up right now like popcorn so we can get you in. I want to acknowledge that we have students from the Association of African Students, the Black Cultural Affairs Board, and the NAACP. And I see a question right back here.
Yes. Hi. I'm Grace Bentley, and I'm a Black Studies major. Gonna graduate in June, so that's cool. And because I'm gonna graduate, I have to figure out what I'm gonna do. And my mentor, Dalton Miller-Jones, told me that I should go to law school. So, and nobody else has ever told me what I should do, so I'm gonna go. Hopefully, but this is a huge issue for me. This is what I want to do, environmental justice. But I know that a lot of programs are really ridiculous and tend to not focus on actual environmental justice, at least not from the perspective that I would be interested in. And the environmental and ecological movement is really grassroots right now. I mean, for white people, brown people, everybody doing it is kind of doing it their own way. And like what was just said, government moves really slow. So is there going to be some kind of a convergence between those two movements that, first of all, the inequity movement that already has been happening forever, the ecological movement that's happening now, and governmental movements or non-movements that are happening or not happening? Is there some kind of, for people who are about to graduate, who are about to go do something in the world, what is a recommended route? Is it to start to go into public office or try to go to law school and try to do all this stuff in a legitimate way? Or is it to just kind of, where you're going to see some real change on the ground level, doing real work, not getting paid or whatever, but still, what would you recommend for young people right now? What route should we take and how should we go about it? And
Thank you for the question.
yeah.
Can I start? There are a couple of different questions that you're posing.
Yeah, sorry.
So let me see if I can break them apart and point to some people in the room. First of all, we've got some lawyers here, practicing lawyers who are doing environmental justice work.
Right.
Chris, I saw you. Yeah, Chris Winter, would you stand up a minute? Chris is representing the Rosemere community in legal action against the Environmental Protection Agency that maybe wants to, talk with you about. It's a wonderful long-term kind of action, and he's doing the work. John Oster in the back. John, you want to stand up for a bit? In addition to doing his work in terms of organizing people, advancing leadership, he's also the professor at Willamette University who does our sustainability law clinic, and he gets the connection between environmental justice and sustainability. So he's got a bunch of law students. Okay, law students, stand up for a minute. You guys are here. Stand up. These are our environmental justice / sustainability law students. So I would encourage you to talk to some of these people in the room, because law school is fundamentally about power. But it's being taught from the people who have it and don't want to give it up. So what you want to do with law school is to change the power structure. You have to understand where you're at. And there are times where you might not like where you're at. But if you go to law school, that's where you're at. But I know that there are other people who had different pieces of this.
And part of what I wanted to say was, even though government moves slow, we've been working on this for 15 years, and government is where it needs to be right now. They need an influx of people because they're already willing. You've got Dick Peterson sitting there in front of you, who helped bring the EJ conversations into the Department of Environmental Quality. So he is a very big supporter of environmental justice. And so there are great places to go currently in the state of Oregon. This isn't happening all around the country. This is happening here where, you know, it's been laid. So there are a lot of different places you can go and work on that issue.
I just noticed something, and I'm going to come to you, Princess. I mentioned earlier that Beth Englander, when she served as an intern in my office, wrote the language for the Governor's Environmental Justice Task Force. This is under the Kitzhaber administration. Beth Englander is in the room. Beth, please stand up. You're part of this history and journey. Princess, please stand.
Well, I just have a quick question.
Speak up.
I'm kind of sick, so. I just have a quick question because I know Portland State is a sustainable school, but to me it all seems to be an illusion because I don't see it. Now, how do we encourage students who are taking environmental sustainability classes to be more involved in the community? Because that to me is just environmental sustainability rather than perhaps the Broadway buildings with LED or solar panel in the ceilings that I don't really see it being important to every single person, to the community. So how do we encourage students at Portland State University when they're taking classes to start thinking about the community, less of solar panels and all the other innuendos that's involved? Because to me it's just an illusion. I don't know what environmental sustainability is. So how do we encourage not only students but our administrators to change their approach on how they're tackling environmental sustainability at Portland State?
Excellent question.
Yeah.
Ben, do you want to start with that one? And as Ben is speaking, the Your Voice document, could we have that? Does everyone have a copy of the Your Voice document? Please, could we have that passed out? Everyone, we want you to look at the language. I believe there's an action step involved, signing the document. Is that correct? Signing the document?
So, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I think in one respect, the onus is on the professors to kind of build it into their curriculum, to really incorporate that into the actual classes. It impedes me to say that you have to mandate students to go get involved in the community, but I feel like that's one way to kind of to push it. And I guess it's, you know, some of the onus is on community-based organizations to really be more active on campus, to really, you know, look for those students and encourage those students and provide opportunities and space within organizations that are doing work to be more inviting and be more welcoming and really, you know, have work and opportunities for students to make meaningful change as part of organizations.
You can also take my course, which will be offered next term, Black Leadership and Community Development. And the framework for that course is the State of Black Oregon, the Urban League document. And so we do focus on the environmental justice subject matter as a part of that course. And that means that our students hear from the experts in the community who are doing the work, and it means that our students go out into the community and connect with the organizations that are doing the work. Thanks for that question, Princess. Additional questions? Ed, did you have a question? Go. Ed, stand, please.
Oh, okay.
Go.
I didn't know we were done with students. A comment and a question. I grew up in the segregated South, and most of the activists in the civil rights movement went on to become elected officials, the most notable of which was Andrew Young. And if you've ever been to Atlanta, modern Atlanta is a product of Andrew Young, who understood that black people needed power, but the white people still had the money, so we got to make sure they're comfortable here too. And it's that kind of pragmatic activism that has made Atlanta the city it is today. And if you've never been, go. It's amazing. And Tyler Perry's probably the poster boy of that. The second thing is this, and Jerry, thank you for mentioning me. You forgot the unspoken R's. race and racism. Now, I'm aware of having privilege because I have pink skin and blue eyes. But the minute people find out I'm queer, that goes flying out the window. So I live in two worlds. But I understand this closet thing. And one of the biggest issues in this region is we do not talk about our horrifically racist past. We celebrate 150 years ago making statehood and forget that the other thing on the ballot, which got even more votes than statehood, was the legal exclusion of black people. Nobody, it's our dirty little secret. And the only way that's going to change is for people to start talking about it. Now, I'm a relative newcomer. I've been here 5 years. And one of the things I told Joanne Bowman, and I'm almost done, is one of the ways I know there's so much racism here is because over half my friends and extended family are people of color. But I moved here, and in trying to strike up conversations with people of color I didn't know, their reaction was, "Are you talking to me?" Now, I've never experienced that anywhere else I've ever lived. That's how bad the racism is here. So let's start talking about it, folks, because it directly connects to all these other issues, and of course the Northern European culture, which unconsciously believes it's the superior culture, and anybody else is just kind of piddling around. They can learn from us, but we don't have anything to learn from them. And I'm sorry, but we white folks wouldn't have survived in this country if it hadn't been for the Native Americans who taught us how to farm it and the black folks who did most of the heavy work. And we need to start owning that, folks. Thank you very much. And thank you.
Additional questions or comments? Yes, please. And if you'd identify yourself.
My name is Meg, and I work with a group called Corporate Accountability International. And the EPA actually released its 10 worst environmental justice communities this year. And one of the cities was Washington, D.C. And I actually went to college there. And one of the biggest problems is actually the two classes of water systems there, where people, as Robin mentioned, buy their way out of the water problems by purchasing bottled water. And schools actually end up having to spend money on bottled water instead of on their textbooks. And we're really fortunate here in Oregon where we have great water. Everybody seems to be really proud of their Bull Run water, especially here in Portland. I was just curious about what water problems you see here, or, you know, the problem in DC is investment in water infrastructure. And we need $7 billion, according to the American Society of Civil Engineers, in our water system over the next 20 years to keep it the way that we have it now and the way that we need it to be for future generations. But meanwhile, we actually have government spending on bottled water, about $90,000 just in the last year. And I was curious where you see government accountability fitting in that picture, and how we can move forward to support our public water systems and keep that work in front going.
Just so you know, the head of Water Watch of Oregon is here in the back of the room, and so you may want to put him on the spot.
I think it would be great to have the head of Water Watch speak to this. That would be excellent. If you can be prepared to do that, that'd be great. I just want to say that I really appreciate your attention to that issue. DEQ sees water as one of our top priorities, not just protecting drinking water, but also protecting water in Oregon's rivers and streams. And there is an incredible need in terms of infrastructure maintenance and improvement for not only drinking water plants, but also wastewater treatment plants. So that is a huge need here in Oregon.
Water in Oregon is fine as long as it rains. But when it doesn't rain, all the promises made down in Cave Falls to the potato farmers and the fishermen and the Native Americans all go away in courts and fights and battles that don't really decide anything. So as long as it rains, there's not a lot of need for accountability.
Yeah.
But with increasing population, unsustainable land use practices, and cumulative environmental impacts disproportionately affecting farm workers, for example, and Native Americans, the problem will arise as an EJ problem, and it has when they were fighting on school buses in Cape Falls when the water was short. But it's the environmentalists and accountability types will call it, quality or access. But it's really an environmental justice issue that will come up as first. And we will have a lot of water wars. They're not just international, they're national, they're statewide, and they're local.
Water Watch?
Yeah, hi, I'm John DeVoe, I'm Executive Director of Water Watch. You're right, we need to invest in public infrastructure to deliver water to people who need it in Oregon, and I'm sure Dick Peterson would agree with that. It's often hard in the legislature with the education budget, with the incarceration budget, with the medication budget, to find money for worthy projects that involve water. I'll tell you, I'll make a plug for something right now that people could participate in that will be very helpful. The state is in the process of developing what's called an integrated water strategy. And there are going to be a series of open houses around the state that you can go to, you can register your comments, you can submit comments online, you can go to the Oregon Water Resources Department's website and register your comments about what you think Oregon's water future ought to look like. And you can say whatever you want. So I would commend that to you. It's the Oregon Water Resources Department. Just go to their website and you can find a place to register comments. And that's part of expressing your voice on the issues. My group really works for healthy rivers. So one question I had for this panel, which is probably a controversial question, is some of you may have seen Governor Kulongoski and Governor Schwarzenegger down in the Capitol a couple of weeks ago signing the Klamath Basin Restoration Agreement. And I just wondered, part of that agreement, what it will do is it will cut off the Hookah Valley tribe's water rights. It'll wipe them out. And I just wondered how the state was justifying participating in an agreement that would do that to a tribe in California.
Are you the state person?
I think I probably am the state person closest to the microphone, but unfortunately, I'm not prepared to give a response to that. It's a good question. We also have representatives of the Klamath tribes here who were signatories to that agreement. But so I'm sorry, I can get back to you on that. Yeah.
Sir, you have a question?
Yeah. I want to respond to a black sister back there who's asking for a program on campus here that might address her issues. I've been involved with the Masters in Conflict Resolution, and there's a Native American, Tom Hastings, who is really vehement and in your corner. I suggest that you check it out. It's very inclusive, and it touches on a lot of the issues that we're talking about here. It's a Masters in Conflict Resolution. Give them a try.
I'm going to ask Jessica Keys to come up from the governor's office. And just a little sidebar, as we were talking about water policy, it reminds me of one of my first committee assignments in 1992, water policy. And I was up in the House lounge one day, and the chair of the committee came up to me and he said, Representative Bordley, I owe you an apology. And I was taken aback, not knowing what he could be referring to. His name was Norris, Chuck Norris, Representative Norris from Hermiston. But he went on to say to me that he had stereotyped me and my participation in the legislature, that when he had first learned that I had been assigned to the Water Policy Committee, he wondered what a black woman from Northeast Portland could possibly contribute to the committee. Now, it took courage for him to say that out loud to me, and from that conversation we developed a relationship, there's that word, and it went as far as to become a friendship. But again, the racism piece is real, and the way in which that gets played out in terms of policy, what policy comes forward or not, has a lot to do with presence. Who's in the room or not? What issues get raised, and and dealt with. Jessica, come on up. We have the governor in the room. You got to take advantage of that.
Yeah, sex change, I guess. It has been a great pleasure working with the Environmental Justice Task Force. I'm technically staff to the task force, working on behalf of the governor, and he's very proud of the work that the task force has been doing, and certainly Senator Gordley's the one that kicked it all off. And so my email and phone number is on the bottom of that Your Voice document, so feel free to contact me directly. I actually don't hear from individuals, stakeholders, citizens all that often, so feel free to contact me. I can also plug you into that water resources strategy that John mentioned. And when you signed up today, we're sharing that with the Black Bag series, but also, if it's okay, we'll put you on our Environmental Justice Task Force email list, and we'll use it to let you know when we have similar meetings like this. A lot of times they're in Salem, but we hope to travel around a little bit more. But thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I also want to acknowledge that we have Mary Beth Healy in the room representing Senator Merkley's office. Please stand. And Mary Beth, a message that we would like for you to take back to the good senator is that we need champions in our delegation. We do not have a champion in our delegation. And knowing how you work, Mary Beth, I know that you'll carry the message with the appropriate emphasis, and we'll be looking forward to hearing.
Mostly because you say so.
And we'll be looking forward to hearing something more from Senator Merkley around this issue. It's particularly around funds that can support our work and carry it forward. I think we're coming close to the end of our time, and so I just want to make a couple of quick points. Again, thanking our panel, our excellent panel. Thank you. And we heard Robin tell us that we need a vision for the future, and we need to activate our communities. So please take the document. Does the document need to be signed and turned into someone? Okay, take the document, share it with other folks. Remember Robin's admonition, which comes from Frederick Douglass: power conceives nothing without a demand. What that brings to mind is that it's taken a long journey to get us to this point. It took 18 legislative sessions starting at the turn of the 20th century, 18 legislative sessions to accomplish Oregon's Civil Rights Bill in 1953, and it took 16 years to get Senate Bill 420, the Environmental Justice Task Force, into law. Power conceives nothing without a demand. Our voices, our activism are working together. And I think it was Jerry who said, we're all related, and she said it kind of in